Tay opened his eyes and looked at the metal ceiling above him. It was the same ceiling he had seen every morning for the past 3 months. He was living on Horizon 7, a space station that floated between 2 star systems. It was not Earth, but it had become his home. He sat up slowly and stretched his arms. The room was small but comfortable. There were 2 beds, 2 desks, and 1 window that showed the endless black of space. Stars twinkled in the distance like tiny diamonds scattered across dark cloth. Tay was 28 years old. He had come to this station to study xenobiology, the science of alien life. Back on Earth, he had been a good student, but here among the stars, he was just another human trying to understand a universe that was bigger than he could imagine. He looked across the room at the other bed. It was empty now, but the sheets were neatly folded. His roommate had already woken up and left, as she did every morning. Her name was Lyra. She was not human. She was a Velen, a species from a distant world called Vel Prime. Her skin was pale blue like the color of winter ice. Her hair was silver and fell straight down her back like threads of moonlight. Her eyes were large and round, the color of polished silver coins. Lyra was beautiful. Tay had noticed this on the first day they met, but her beauty was cold, like a statue made of crystal. She never smiled. She rarely spoke. She moved through their shared space like a ghost, quiet and distant. In 3 months, they had exchanged maybe 50 words. Most of those words were simple things. "Good morning. Excuse me. The bathroom is free." That was all. Tay did not take it personally. He had learned during his training that Velens were different from humans. They came from a dying world, a planet that orbited a weak and fading star. Their species had evolved to survive in cold and darkness. They conserved energy in every way possible. Talking, smiling, laughing, these things used energy that Velens could not afford to waste. Still, Tay sometimes wondered if Lyra was lonely. He got out of bed and walked to the small kitchen area. He made himself a cup of coffee and some toast. The food on the station was not as good as Earth food, but Tay had learned to accept it. He sat by the window and ate slowly, watching the stars. An hour later, Lyra returned. She walked through the door without looking at him. Her movements were graceful and silent. She sat at her desk and opened her study tablet. Blue light glowed on her face as she began to read. Tay watched her for a moment. He wanted to say something. He wanted to ask how her day was going or if she needed anything. But every time he tried to start a conversation with her, she answered with 1 or 2 words and then returned to silence. So Tay said nothing. He finished his coffee and went to his own desk to study. The days passed like this. Quiet routine, comfortable in a strange way, but also empty. Tay had friends on the station, other human students, and a few aliens who were friendly toward his kind. But inside his own room, he lived with a stranger. One evening, something changed. Tay came back to the room late. He had been in the library, reading about alien biology. When he opened the door, he saw Lyra sitting at her desk as usual. But something was different. She was shivering. Tay stopped and looked at her carefully. The room temperature was set to optimal levels. The station's climate control was perfect. There was no reason for anyone to be cold. But Lyra's hands were trembling. Her shoulders were pulled tight. Her breath came out in small, quiet puffs. Tay walked closer. He could see that her skin had changed color slightly. It was less blue and more gray, like the color of ash. "You okay?" he asked. Lyra did not look up. "I am fine," she said. Her voice was flat and cold as always. Tay did not believe her. He had studied enough alien biology to know that color changes in skin often meant something was wrong. But he also knew that Velens were proud. They did not like to show weakness. He thought for a moment. Then he walked to his bed and picked up his extra blanket. It was a thick blanket, made of soft material that held heat well. Tay's mother had sent it to him from Earth. It was one of his most precious possessions. He walked over to Lyra and held out the blanket. She looked at it. Then she looked at him. Her silver eyes were unreadable. "What is this?" she asked. "A blanket," Tay said simply. "You look cold." Lyra stared at the blanket for a long time. Tay could see something moving behind her eyes. Confusion, maybe, or surprise. Velans did not often receive gifts. Their culture valued independence and self-sufficiency. Finally, she reached out and took the blanket. She did not say thank you. She did not smile. But she wrapped the blanket around her shoulders and pulled it tight. Tay nodded and walked back to his bed. He picked up his tablet and pretended to read, but his mind was elsewhere. He kept glancing at Lyra from the corner of his eye. She sat there for a long time, wrapped in his blanket. The shivering slowly stopped. Her skin began to return to its normal blue color. When Tay finally fell asleep that night, he thought he heard something. It was soft, barely a whisper. Words in a language he did not understand. Velan words. He did not know what they meant. But somehow they felt important. The next morning, the blanket was folded neatly on Tay's desk. Lyra was already gone. Everything seemed normal, but Tay noticed something new. On his desk next to the blanket there was a small object. It was a stone, smooth and round, with a faint blue glow inside it. He picked it up carefully. It was warm in his hand. Tay did not know what the stone meant. He did not know if it was a gift or a message or something else entirely. But for the first time in 3 months, he felt like something had shifted between them. Maybe Lyra was not as cold as she seemed. Maybe, beneath all that ice, there was something waiting to be found. Tay put the stone in his pocket and went to class with a small smile on his face. He did not know what would happen next, but he was curious to find out. The universe was full of mysteries. And his roommate, he realized, was one of the biggest mysteries of all. A week passed after the night with the blanket. Things between Tay and Lyra did not change much on the surface. She still kept to herself. She still spoke in short, simple words. But Tay noticed small differences. Sometimes when he entered the room, she would look up at him for a moment before returning to her work. Sometimes, when they passed each other in the small kitchen, she would give a tiny nod. These were small things. But to Tay, they felt like progress. He kept the glowing stone in his pocket. He did not know what it was or why she had given it to him. But it felt important, so he carried it with him everywhere. During this week, Tay learned more about Velans through his studies. He read that their homeworld was dying. The star that gave them light was growing weaker every year. Their planet was cold and dark, covered in ice and shadow. The Velan people had adapted to this harsh life. They had learned to save energy in every way possible, but Tay also read something else. Something that worried him. Velans were not meant to live alone. On their homeworld, they lived in large family groups. They slept close together, sharing warmth and energy. This was not just a cultural practice. It was a biological need. Velans needed the presence of others to stay healthy. Without it, their bodies would begin to fail. This condition was called the fading. Tay thought about Lyra. She lived alone in a room with a human who did not understand her. She had no family here, no other Velans nearby. She was isolated in a way that could be dangerous for her kind. He wanted to ask her about it, but he did not know how. Velans were private people. They did not like others to worry about them. So Tay said nothing. He just watched and waited. Then one night, everything changed. Tay went to bed early that night. He was tired from a long day of classes and studying. He fell asleep quickly. Dreaming of Earth and his family and the green hills of his childhood home, he did not know how long he slept. But sometime in the deep darkness of the night, he woke up. Something was wrong. There was a weight on his bed. Something warm and cold at the same time. Something trembling. Tay opened his eyes and looked down. His heart stopped. Lyra was lying next to him. She was curled into a tight ball, her arms wrapped around herself. Her whole body was shaking violently like a leaf in a storm. Her skin was no longer blue. It was gray and pale, almost white. Her silver hair stuck to her face, wet with sweat. Tay sat up quickly. His mind raced with fear and confusion. What was happening? What was wrong with her? He reached out and touched her forehead. Her skin was burning hot, so hot it almost hurt his fingers. But when he touched her hands, they were freezing cold, like blocks of ice. This was not normal. This was not right. Tay grabbed his communicator from the bedside table. He was about to call the medical center when Lyra's hand shot out and grabbed his wrist. Her grip was weak but desperate. "Wait, no," she whispered. Her voice was thin and broken. "Do not call them. They cannot help." Tay looked at her in shock. Her silver eyes were open now, but they were dim and unfocused. She was looking at him, but it seemed like she was looking through him. "Lyra, you are sick," Tay said. "You need a doctor." She shook her head slowly. The movement seemed to cost her great effort. "Not sick," she breathed. "Fading, my kind. We cannot survive the fading alone." The fading. Tay remembered what he had read. The condition that happened when Velans were isolated for too long. Their cells began to break down. Their energy faded away. Without help, they would die. "Then I will find other Velans," Tay said. "There must be some on the station." "Too far," Lyra whispered. "Too late. The fading moves fast." By morning, she did not finish the sentence. She did not need to. Tay felt fear grip his heart. He looked at this woman, this strange, cold, beautiful woman who had been his roommate for 3 months. He barely knew her. They had barely spoken. But the thought of losing her filled him with a sadness he did not expect. "What can I do?" he asked. "Tell me what to do." Lyra's eyes focused on him for a moment. There was surprise in them, and something else. Something like hope. "Warmth," she said. "We need warmth. Emotional energy. The presence of another living being. Close. Constant." Kay understood. On her homeworld, Velans survived the fading by staying close to their families. They shared body heat and emotional energy. But here, Lyra had no family. She had no one, except him. Tay did not hesitate. He pulled the blankets over both of them and lay down beside her. He wrapped his arms around her trembling body and pulled her close. She was so cold. Even with her fever, her body felt like ice against his. Tay could feel the chill seeping through his clothes, into his skin, into his bones. But he did not let go. "I am here," he said softly. "I am not going anywhere." Lyra did not respond. Her eyes had closed again. Her breathing was shallow and fast. But she pressed herself closer to him, seeking his warmth like a flower seeking the sun. The night was long and dark. Tay did not sleep. He could not sleep. He lay there in the darkness, holding Lyra, listening to her breathing, feeling her heart beat against his chest. Sometimes she would shake violently, and Tay would hold her tighter. Sometimes she would whisper words in Velan, words he did not understand. Sometimes she would cry out in fear or pain, and Tay would speak softly to her, telling her it was okay, telling her she was safe. He did not know if she could hear him. He did not know if it made any difference, but he kept talking anyway. He told her about Earth, about his home, about his family. He told her about the green hills and the blue oceans and the warm sun. He told her about his mother's cooking and his father's laugh and the way the wind felt on a summer day. He gave her everything he had, all his warmth, all his memories, all his hope. Hours passed. The trembling slowly began to fade. Lyra's skin began to change color, shifting from gray back to pale blue. Her breathing became slower and deeper. Her body became warmer. Tay watched the change with tired, hopeful eyes. He did not know if it was working. He did not know if one human could save a Velan from the fading, but he refused to give up. When the first light of the artificial morning began to glow through the window, Lyra finally stopped shaking. Her skin was blue again. Her breathing was calm. She was sleeping real sleep, not the terrible unconsciousness of before. Tay let out a long breath. His body was exhausted. His arms were sore from holding her all night. But when he looked at Lyra's peaceful face, he felt something warm bloom in his chest. He had done it. He did not know how, but he had done it. She was going to be okay. Tay closed his eyes and let himself rest, still holding her close. Outside the window, stars continued to shine in the endless black of space. But inside the small room, something had changed. Something new had been born, and neither of them would ever be the same. Again, Lyra opened her eyes slowly. The first thing she saw was the metal ceiling of their shared room. The second thing she noticed was warmth. Real warmth. Deep warmth that went all the way to her bones. This was strange. Vellans did not feel warm. They came from a cold world. Their bodies were made for ice and darkness. Warmth was a foreign thing, something they only felt when surrounded by family. But Lyra felt warm now. She tried to move and realized something else. Arms were wrapped around her. Human arms. She was lying in a bed that was not her own, pressed against a body that radiated heat like a small star. Toad memory came flooding back. The fading. The terrible cold. The feeling of her cells shutting down one by one. She had been dying. She knew it with certainty. The fading was a death sentence for Vellans, who lived alone, but she had not died. Lyra turned her head slowly and looked at Tay's face. He was asleep, but his sleep was not peaceful. There were dark circles under his eyes. His face was pale with exhaustion. He looked like a man who had fought a war all night long, and in a way he had. Lyra remembered fragments of the night. She remembered crawling to his bed because her own bed felt like a grave. She remembered his arms wrapping around her. She remembered his voice, speaking softly in the darkness, telling her stories about a world called Earth. He had stayed with her, all night long. He had given her his warmth, his energy, his presence. He had refused to let her go. No one had ever done that for her before. Lyra lay still for a long time watching Tay sleep. She studied his face, his soft features, his closed eyes, his slightly open mouth. He was not beautiful by Vellan standards. His skin was the wrong color. His hair was too dark. His body was too warm. But in that moment, Lyra thought he was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. Slowly, carefully, she reached up and touched his cheek. His skin was soft and warm under her fingers. A small smile appeared on his sleeping face, as if he could feel her touch even in his dreams. Lyra pulled her hand back. She did not understand what she was feeling. Vellans were not emotional beings. They did not form attachments easily. They did not feel things deeply. But right now, Lyra felt something deep in her chest. Something warm and unfamiliar. Something that scared her and comforted her at the same time. She closed her eyes and let herself rest against him for a little longer. An hour later, Tay woke up. His eyes opened slowly, blinking in the artificial light. He looked down and saw Lyra looking up at him. "Stayed," she said. Her voice was still weak, but it was steady now. Tay blinked in confusion. Then understanding filled his eyes. "Of course I stayed," he said simply. "You needed help." Lyra sat up slowly. Her body felt strange, weak, but alive. She could feel her cells humming with energy again. The fading had passed. She had survived, because of him. "You do not understand," Lyra said. "No human has ever stopped the fading before. It was thought to be impossible. Our species are too different. Our energies are not compatible." Tay sat up too. He ran a hand through his messy hair. "I did not think about compatibility," he admitted. "I just knew you were dying. I could not let that happen." Lyra stared at him. This was not logical. This was not rational. On her homeworld, every action had purpose. Every choice was calculated. Vellans did not risk themselves for strangers. They did not give their warmth to those outside their family. But this human had done exactly that. Why? She asked. The question came out before she could stop it. "Why did you help me? We are not family. We are barely friends. You owed me nothing." Tay looked at her for a long moment. His dark eyes were thoughtful. "On Earth," he said slowly, "we have a saying. It goes like this. A stranger is just a friend you have not met yet." Lyra frowned. "That does not make logical sense." No, Tay agreed. "It does not. But humans are not always logical. We feel things. We act on those feelings. When I saw you suffering, I felt pain. I did not want you to hurt, so I helped, even though it was dangerous." Lyra asked. "Even though you might have caught the fading yourself?" Tay smiled. It was a warm smile full of light. Humans cannot catch the fading. We are too warm for that. Our bodies burn with energy all the time. It is just how we are made." Lyra thought about this. She had learned about humans in her studies. She knew they came from a world with a strong sun. She knew their bodies ran hot, burning food into energy at incredible rates. She knew they were emotional creatures, prone to acting without thinking, but she had been taught that these were weaknesses. Human emotions were dangerous. Human warmth was erratic. Human hearts were unreliable. Now she was not so sure. My people believe that humans are unstable, Lyra said carefully. They say your emotions make you dangerous. They say you cannot be trusted. Tay nodded. He did not seem offended. Your people are not entirely wrong, he said. Humans have done terrible things in our history. We have wars and violence and hatred. We can be very cruel to each other. He paused and looked out the window at the stars. But we can also be very kind, he continued. We can love deeply. We can sacrifice everything for others. We can reach across differences and find connection. That is also part of being human. Lyra considered his words. They matched what she had experienced. This human had every reason to ignore her. They were strangers. Their species had no alliance. There was nothing to gain from saving her, but he had saved her anyway. I do not understand you, Lyra admitted. Tay laughed softly. That is okay. I do not understand myself most of the time, but maybe understanding is not the most important thing. What is the most important thing? Lyra asked. Tay looked at her. His eyes were warm and gentle. Connection, he said. Finding people who matter to you. Holding on to them. That is what gives life meaning. Lyra felt something shift inside her. Something that had been frozen for a very long time began to thaw. She did not have words for what she was feeling, but she knew it was something new. Something important. I gave you a stone, she said suddenly. A blue glowing stone. Do you still have it? Tay reached into his pocket and pulled out the small stone. It glowed softly in his palm. I kept it with me every day, he said. I did not know what it meant, but it felt important. Lyra looked at the stone. Then she looked at Tay. It is a bonding stone, she explained. On my world, we give them to people we wish to keep close. People we trust, she paused, realizing what she had done without fully thinking about it. I gave it to you before I understood why, she continued. But now I think I know. Some part of me recognized you. Some part of me knew you were different. Tay held the stone gently, its light reflected in his eyes. Different how? Lyra thought for a moment. Then she spoke the truest words she had ever said. Different in a way that feels like home. The room was quiet after that. The two of them sat together on the bed, not touching, but close. Outside the window, stars continued their eternal dance. Inside the room, two beings from different worlds found themselves connected by something stronger than distance, something that felt like the beginning of everything. News spread fast on a space station. There were no secrets in a place where thousands of beings lived together in metal corridors. Whispers traveled from mouth to ear like wind through leaves. Within 3 days, everyone on Horizon 7 knew what had happened. A human had saved. A Velen from the fading. This should not have been possible. The fading was a Velen condition. It required Velen energy to cure. For centuries, medical science had believed that only another Velen could stop the fading. No other species had the right kind of warmth, but Tay had done it anyway. The first to come were the doctors. They arrived at Tay and Lyra's room with scanners and questions. They examined Lyra carefully, checking her cells, her energy levels, her vital signs. They found that she was completely healthy. The fading had left no damage. Then they examined Tay. They scanned his body and studied his energy patterns. They asked him dozens of questions about that night. What had he done? What had he felt? Had he used any special technology? Tay answered honestly. He had done nothing special. He had just held her close and shared his warmth. He had talked to her and stayed with her. That was all. The doctors looked at each other with puzzled expressions. This did not match their theories. This did not fit their models. A human's warmth should not have been enough, but the evidence was clear. Lyra was alive and healthy. Something had happened that science could not explain, After the doctors came, the researchers. They wanted to study Tay and Lyra more closely. They wanted to understand how human energy could substitute for Velen energy. They believed this discovery could change interspecies medicine forever. Lyra agreed to help with the research. She was a scientist herself and she understood the importance of this discovery. But Tay was more reluctant. He did not like being treated as a test subject. "I did not save her to become famous," he told Lyra one evening. "I saved her because she needed help. That is all." Lyra nodded. She understood. But she also knew that their experience could help others. There were Velens living alone on stations and planets across the galaxy. Many of them risked the fating. If human warmth could save them, countless lives might be spared. So Tay agreed to participate. He answered the researchers' questions. He let them scan and study him. He told his story again and again. Slowly, word spread beyond the station. Diplomats heard about the incident. Politicians discussed it in meetings. Scientists wrote papers about it. News reporters shared the story across the galaxy. The human who saved a Velen became a symbol. But Tay did not care about symbols. He only cared about one thing. Lyra was changing at first. The changes were small. She started saying good morning when Tay woke up. She started asking about his day when he came home. She started eating meals with him instead of alone at her desk. Then the changes became bigger. She started smiling, sometimes small, uncertain smiles that lasted only a second. She started laughing at his jokes, quiet laughs that sounded like music. She started sitting closer to him when they studied together. Other aliens on the station noticed these changes too. They watched Tay with new curiosity. A human who could make a Velen smile was a rare thing indeed. Perhaps humans were not as dangerous as everyone believed. One day, Tay was walking through the station corridors when a group of Tauric approached him. The Tauric were a tall species with 4 arms and dark green skin. They were known for being serious and distant. The lead Tauric stopped in front of Tay and studied him carefully. "You are the human who saved the Velen," the Tauric said. It was not a question. Tay nodded. "I am." The Tauric was silent for a moment. Then it spoke again. "My people believe that humans are chaotic. We believe your emotions make you weak. But what you did was not weak. It was strong." Tay did not know what to say. "Thank you," he managed. The Tauric nodded once and walked away. But Tay could feel that something had shifted. The way other aliens looked at him was different now. There was less suspicion in their eyes. Less fear, more respect. That evening, Tay told Lyra about the encounter. She listened carefully, her silver eyes thoughtful. "You are changing how they see your species," she said. "One act of kindness is doing what centuries of diplomacy could not." "I did not plan to change anything. I just did what felt right." Lyra looked at him for a long moment. Then she said something that surprised him. "That is exactly why it matters." She moved closer to him on the small couch they shared. Her shoulder touched his. Her warmth Velen, warmth, cool, but real, pressed against him. "You do not calculate your kindness," she continued. "You do not plan your care. You simply give it, freely and without expectation. This is what makes humans special." Tay felt his face grow warm. He was not used to compliments, especially not from her. "Velens are special too," he said softly. "You just show it differently." Lyra smiled. It was a real smile this time, bigger than before. It transformed her face, making her look younger and softer and more alive. "Perhaps," she said, "but I am learning new ways to show it. Because of you." They sat together in comfortable silence. Outside their window, the galaxy continued to spin. Stars were born and died. Species rose and fell. Empires grew and crumbled, but in one small room, on one small station. 2 beings from different worlds sat together and felt something that was bigger than all of it. Something that felt like the start of something beautiful. 6 months had passed since the night. Tay saved Lyra from the fating. In that time, everything had changed. And nothing had changed at all. They still lived in the same small room. They still had 2 beds, 2 desks, and 1 window that looked out at the stars. The metal walls were the same. The recycled air smelled the same. The hum of the station's engines still vibrated through the floor. But the feeling inside the room was completely different. Lyra had become a different person. She still spoke in her quiet way. She still moved with grace and calm. But there was warmth in her, now a warmth that had nothing to do with temperature. She smiled often. She laughed sometimes. She touched Tay's arm when she walked past him, small gestures that meant everything. Her research had become famous across the galaxy. She had published papers about human emotional energy and its effects on Velan biology. Scientists on 12 different star systems were using her work to develop new medical treatments. Velans who lived far from their homeworld no longer needed to fear the fating. They could find warmth from other species, especially from humans. Lyra had changed interspecies medicine forever. But when people praised her for this, she always said the same thing. I did not do it alone. A human showed me what was possible. Tay had changed too. He was no longer just a student. He had become a symbol of what humans could be. Diplomats invited him to meetings. Researchers asked for his advice. Young aliens who had feared humans now approached him with curiosity and respect. But he only cared about one thing. Lyra. One night, Tay came back to their room after a long day. He was tired and hungry and thinking about nothing but sleep. But when he opened the door, he stopped. Lyra was sitting on his bed. This was not unusual anymore. They often sat together now, talking or studying or just being near each other. But something about tonight felt different. There was a tension in the air, a feeling of something about to happen. Tay walked in slowly and sat beside her. Is everything okay? He asked. Lyra did not answer right away. She looked down at her hands, which were folded in her lap. Her silver hair fell across her face like a curtain. I have been studying your species for 6 months now, she said finally. I have read every paper. I have analyzed every piece of data. I understand human biology and psychology better than most aliens in the galaxy. She paused. Her voice was soft and uncertain, very different from her usual confident tone. But there is one thing I still do not understand. Tay waited. His heart was beating faster than normal, though he did not know why. Lyra looked up at him. Her silver eyes were bright and deep, like pools of starlight. I do not understand why being near you makes me feel like I am home. The words hung in the air between them. Tay felt something warm bloom in his chest. It spread through his body like sunlight, touching every part of him. Lyra, he said softly. She held up her hand to stop him. Let me finish, please. Tay nodded and stayed silent. On Vel Prime, we do not believe in love the way humans do, Lyra continued. We believe in partnership, practical unions between compatible individuals. Emotions are seen as distractions. Attachments are seen as weaknesses. She took a deep breath. Her hands were trembling slightly. But I do not feel weak when I am with you. I feel strong. Stronger than I have ever felt. You make me want to smile. You make me want to laugh. You make me want to stay close to you forever. Tears appeared in her silver eyes. Velans did not cry often. It was a sign of extreme emotions, something her species tried to avoid, but Lyra was not avoiding anything now. She was being completely honest, completely vulnerable, completely open. I do not know what to call this feeling, she whispered, but I know it is real, and I know it is because of you. Tay reached out and took her hand. Her fingers were cool against his warm palm, but they fit together perfectly, like two pieces of a puzzle. On Earth, he said gently, we call that feeling love. Lyra's eyes widened. Love, she repeated, as if testing the word on her tongue. Yes, Tay said, and I feel it too. I have felt it for a long time. Since the night I held you in the darkness, maybe even before that. Lyra stared at him. More tears fell down her blue cheeks. But she was smiling, a real, full, beautiful smile that lit up her entire face. Then perhaps our species are not so different after all, she said. Tay laughed softly. Perhaps not. He leaned forward and pressed his forehead against hers. It was a gesture of connection, of closeness, of love. Their breath mingled in the small space between them. Outside the window, stars shone in the endless black. Somewhere out there, millions of species lived and died, fought and loved, reached for connection across the vast distances of space. But in this moment, none of that mattered. There was only this room, this bed. These two beings who had found each other against all odds. Tay realized something then, something that astonished him, filled him with joy at the same time. Humanity's greatest gift to the galaxy was not their technology. It was not their strength or their intelligence. It was something much simpler. It was their warmth, their kindness, their stubborn refusal to let distance or difference stand in the way of connection. And as Tay held Lyra close, feeling her cool skin against his warm hands, he knew that this was just the beginning. The universe was vast, cold and full of mysteries, but love could cross any distance, and that was the most astonishing thing of all.